Welcome, everybody, to episode 38 of UnHacked. Guys, like I say every week, UnHacked is a deliberate misnomer. Truth is, 97% of these breaches, roughly speaking, are preventable using basic security measures, and we're going to talk about that today. But once you've been hit, you can never truly get unhacked. So week after week, we sit here and we break it down. We talk about what overwhelmed, busy business owners should be doing to outsmart the Russian hackers. We give them the basics, the best practices, the frameworks, as we're going to talk about today with Tim. Thank you for being here, Tim, by the way. We're going to give everybody the 97%. This is the formula that you should be following. And then at the end of the show, we're going to close that 3% gap. So let's get started. I am Justin Shelley, CEO of Phoenix IT Advisors. I work with businesses in the Dallas metro and more recently out here in northern Nevada, rural, middle of nowhere. Also into Elko. Oh, sorry, that's where I'm at now. Into Salt Lake and possibly Idaho if you talk nice to me. And I am here with my regular co-host Bryan and Mario. Bryan, tell everybody who you are, what you do, and who you do it for.
Excellent. My name is Bryan Lachapelle with B4 Networks, based out of the Niagara Falls, Ontario area, and we provide support to businesses throughout the area. And I like to say that we primarily help business owners who are frustrated with technology remove that frustration that comes with dealing with technology. And that could involve everything from cybersecurity all the way to compliance.
All right, Mario, you're up next.
Oh, Mario Zaki, CEO of Mastic IT. We are in North Jersey, right outside of Manhattan. I've been in business for over 20 years now, servicing, people with computers, businesses with computers, helping them pretty much do everything IT. And after today, maybe compliance.
All right, I love that. I love it. In today's episode, guys, we are going to be talking with Tim Golden of Compliance Scorecard. Tim, thank you so much for being here. I know you've got plenty of things to do, so really appreciate you joining us.
Justin, I'm so glad to be here. Thank you so much. Justin, I think I heard Idaho. Is that correct? And Mario, I might have heard New Jersey. And Bryan, I think I heard Canada, right? Am I correct?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yep.
So Justin,
yes, sir.
What did Delaware? Idaho? Could have been a New Jersey. Can we find her a right shirt? But always got to start off with a good dad joke. I set the paces here, and I've been waiting for that. So what did Delaware? Idaho. Could have been a New Jersey. But I can't ask her.
I love it.
I got my own Utah-Idaho joke. How come all the trees in Idaho lean south?
I don't know.
Because Utah sucks. Anyways.
That's awesome. So let me take a second to introduce myself. Tim Golden, founder and CEO of Compliance Scorecard, where we help MSPs just like you have that risk conversation with your customers by delivering our scorecards to them.
I love it. And Tim, there's a couple things that caught my attention. The reason I really wanted you on, and it's selfish. Usually when I bring people on here, it is pure selfishness.
Perfect.
I have UnHacked. This has been a journey for me. Podcasting itself has been a journey. I learn more by doing this show than anything else I've ever done in my life, I think. So over the course of 2024, one of the things that evolved in my brain was to shift my business focus to a compliance first mindset. Now,
I love that. Why are you not a partner?
Well,
kidding.
We need to talk about that actually.
Right.
So, we are. So you said, and I'm going to pop quiz you a little bit. Sure. You have a passion for empowering MSPs to achieve operational excellence. Tell me a little bit more about that, because that's something that caught my attention.
Yeah. So, operational excellence, what does that even mean? It sounds like big marketing, fluffy words. And yeah, it kind of is. But the idea behind it is, the more you can document a thing, have a repeatable process, have everybody along the chain understand why you're doing that thing, not just to have the thing, but getting the buy-in all the way up and down the chain, you can really start to gain that excellence because everybody knows why, and the operational efficiency because you have a documented, repeatable process, something that you can scale, something that you can then have a baseline and a standard to work towards, grow, and evolve through. And by understanding the why, building out the how, and bringing the people along the way, you will gain that excellence along the way.
I absolutely love that. I am a fan of EOS. Are you familiar with them?
Yes, we
Okay.
actually, so it was really interesting when we first founded Compliance Scorecard. It was literally just myself and my chief wrangler, my wife, chief wrangler officer, chief operating officer. It's literally just the two of us. And I'm like, EOS, something I believe in, traction, the right people, the right seat, the right time. But it was really hard with just two people. So we kind of made our own version of it. But now that we're, well over, I think 20 some odd, 25, I can't even count FTE. We have a bunch of people now. So EOS, traction, it's taken us not a lot of time, but a lot of time to find the right person for the right seat in the right role. We kind of knew what those roles were, but obviously we needed to grow into all of those roles appropriately, hire accordingly, which, hiring is not fun. Fortunately, I have other people beside me now in hiring decisions. So, EOS and traction is great.
And it sounds like maybe you at least align with their documenting core processes, because that's what I heard you say. Have those processes, roll them out, get buy-in. That really is a key component of EOS. I absolutely love it. I actually completely ripped off their they've got like a one-pager
accountability plan.
Yeah. What do they call it though? They have a different name for it.
But I know you called it the same page accountability plan, and I ripped it off you.
That's right. So you start with, he does in the book, he comes in, he does that free evaluation 2-hour thing, and then you get into a deeper planning session, and then you get into your quarterly rotations. That's how I approach my business, and really how I work compliance into it. So
well, one of our very first advisors. So we have an advisor council, right? People that advise us, right? Just again, back to the roots. It was just the two of us, and one of our advisors, Kyle, good friend of ours, now over at Empath, Kyle Christensen, was EOS Pinnacle implementer certified. He was all the things. That was his core business for a long time, and so it's really helpful to kind of work alongside a coach in that kind of stuff. And it's interesting because a lot of my 20 plus years in the compliance space, a lot of what I was doing there kind of mimicked EOS and traction. So I was kind of doing this already. I just didn't realize there was a name to it until somebody said, "Hey, go buy this book." And I'm like, "Oh my God, I do 80% of this, but in the total wrong order and the total wrong way." But yeah.
Yep, that's good stuff. All right, we're going to pivot, and I want to talk about, I want to get into the nuts and bolts of this thing. And I'll just be honest. I'm going to tell myself a little bit there. I'm going to read a quote that I got off of Reddit, and I'm probably going to beat this guy up for the rest of my life, because partly because what he said was the most asinine thing I've ever heard, but
also rings true.
A little bit of, it kind of tweaked me just a little bit. So, okay, here we go. Word for word. Overnight, I received an odd request from a prospect. The prospect asked for a list of the best practices, he puts in quotes, that I would be applying. This got me laughing and then thinking, where do I get my best practices from? What are they? This has been bothering me as I start with my coffee. 30 plus years of experience in the industry. And I doubt my list and your list are the same. Though they should have overlap if they're truly best practices, right? True. Time to discuss this one and look at the policies in my RMM for my own comfort. It's been a while since I compared these. Tim, you're familiar with what an RMM is, correct? Is that where you get your policies that you throw into Compliance Scorecard?
Wait a minute, RMM?
Well, if you use the RMM to log into somebody's computer and get their policies, I guess that works, right?
I don't know. I'm just 30 years, guys. 30 years.
30 years, and my RMM manages my documentation, my attestation, my change management. My RMM can auto audit log all my, like, okay, perfect. I'm done here. Like, everybody just go buy, Kaseya or ConnectWise or Ninja or we're done here.
Game over. Game over. No value add here.
PRC because your RMM can do it. Okay.
Oh, so yeah, I mean this is really the core of what I would call the problem in the world of technology, or at least the world of MSPs, is we are not regulated as an industry.
No, we're not.
Now, and we're going to talk about why it's so important that other industries are, and I still don't understand why we're not, but we're not. But other groups are. So we're going to let's define compliance, because that can mean a million things. Tim, this is the world you live and die in. What is compliance? If you're talking to somebody who, listen, his job is to run a business. He's got a million hats, a million things he needs to know and understand. He probably doesn't give a damn what we're talking about. What are we talking?
There's a couple of questions. He doesn't give a damn. That's another component of this,
it is.
Right?
Yep.
But if we think of compliance, right, and we could relate this to multiple different analogies, like Joe's Baker, for example. Joe's Baker doesn't give a crap about compliance, but Joe's Baker does care about the recipe for making the cake.
Correct.
Yep.
Right? Or Johnny's Lug Nut Factory that does work for the Department of Defense and now fall into this CMM 800-170 CMMC thing. Like, they should care, because compliance, we like to reference that as the referee for cybersecurity.
Right.
Right. I like to put my hat on because we are scorecards, kind of play a little bit into the, sport theme with compliance is the referee for cybersecurity. It has the playbooks, it has the rules, it has the regulations. It knows how to play the game. It throws the flags up. It throws the flags up when something is a foul. The players now know what rules to follow. They know what guidelines to deal with. In our opinion, it's almost like having a referee during your favorite sports game, where that's the person, that's the key, that's the source of truth for things that you're doing along cybersecurity, along FTC, along any one of the mouthful of acronym frameworks. Compliance, in its simplest form, is having a rule book or a playbook and guardrails to follow.
Let me play devil's advocate a little bit for this guy who I just slaughtered from Reddit. Why do we need so many damn versions of compliance? You threw out several acronyms and you just scratched the surface.
Yeah, that's a problem.
There's dozens of frameworks. Why do we need so many?
Without getting into the politicalness of why things exist, right?
Good call.
Whether it's the FTC regulating certain industries, or it's the Department of Defense regulating their industry. There's some politicalness behind that on the lobbying bodies, the laws, the regulations. At least here in the U.S., there's political components behind some of that. We don't even need to get into. But at the core of many frameworks, at least for us, as we start to look at things, NIST, so the National Institute of Standards and Technology, and CISA, the Center for Internet Security and CIS Controls, which is slightly derived out of NIST, there are many paths back to NIST 853, which is a giant control list, 1,029 controls, that if you look at a bunch of the different industries, can somewhat correlate back to, maybe not word for word, maybe not intent, back to something in a NIST control, at least in my opinion. Now, cross-mapping, a whole nother can of worms. We could probably spend a whole nother episode talking about cross-mapping. Yeah, I'm not going to.
That sounds so exciting. Why don't we do that?
Well, actually, there's a lot of marketing jargon out there, and it's bad around cross-marketing, whatever. So to answer your specific question, why do we have so many frameworks? I don't know. Why do we have so many laws that govern different things? And why do we not have laws that govern things that should be governed in effect? Like, I don't know, HIPAA, healthcare data. We have PCI for a reason to protect credit card data and financial information.
How much different? So you made a good point. Oh, sorry, I'm stepping on you there. Go ahead.
No, I just say we have different laws because of different verticals and different industries and different interest groups pushing their agendas.
Okay. And if, like you said, if we took politics out of it for a second, there are some, I guess, some nuances or some specialty areas with each of these frameworks, but you did point out they all kind of tie back to one master set of standards. Is that fair?
In my opinion,
okay.
You can, now again, cross-mapping aside, because I don't believe in that at the moment.
Okay.
You can correlate as long as scope is the same, intention is the same. Like there's other components of a compliance program that are the same, because I'll just pick on one control, password policy. Everybody knows, like, hey, we should have good passwords. Best practices, have a good password. Right? Back to your Reddit post. Have a good password. Well, some frameworks might say, have an 8 or 10 character password and multi-factor. Another framework might say only administrative accounts need to have a 47,000 character password that changes randomly every 5 seconds. They're both talking about passwords, but the requirements and the intent is different.
Right.
Okay. And here's another pop quiz. I heard, I haven't verified this, that whoever the powers are that decide what passwords should be, recently removed the recommendation to change your password every 90 days. What can you tell us about that?
NIST actually came out and updated the core, and it actually moved away just from password as a control to identity management, right? And understanding that as a human or as a device, a laptop, a whatever, there's identity tied to that, and having strong identity authentication. So, how many people log into their phone with their face? I know I do. I know I have been for a long time. And if it wasn't my face, it was my finger.
Yeah.
Right. So there's an identity aspect of that. Now, granted, there's characters and I can type them in and get into it that way, but conceptually, the days of make sure you have 8 characters and they're changed every 90 days, and you go into your global your GPOs and change them so that the policy object, and everybody ends up using the same 8 characters across everything.
That never happens. What are you talking about?
Can I anecdote a little story here for a minute?
Absolutely.
So my mother-in-law, she's very sharp for an 80-something-year-old, and she's great. And we were talking about they're older. Maybe we got 20 years left with them. I don't know, whatever. But she's very concerned about protecting her assets, and so we got her a password manager for their, for my mother and father-in-law. I sat down with them, started teaching them how to use 1Password, appropriately sharing that with my wife so that there was a backup person, like we should be doing. And, when you get the little score that shows you how many reused or weak passwords there were, there were a few that I was like, oh my God, let's change that right now. Not that they were, they were obviously conscious of being secure and wanting to do the right thing. That's why they asked. That's why I sat with them and got a password manager in place. But I'm like, these 5 we're literally changing right now. Like, I'm just not waiting.
Password 1.
You would be absolutely shocked as to what we find out there in the wild. I have a prospect that I won't mention names. Every one of their Office 365 passwords are the same across the entire company because the one guy wants to manage it all, and so they're all the same password.
Ooh. Wow. Including the admin? Does that include his admin password?
And let me guess. He just filled out one of those Facebook questionnaires about, give me your manufacturer name and your street name, and we'll give you back your stripper name or something like that.
Right.
What's your favorite color, Tim?
Yeah.
Golden, of course.
Yeah.
Oh, good times, good times. So, all right, I'm a CEO of a whatever
Congratulations.
random organization. Thank you. I've worked my ass off for this. I back to the original question. Not only do I not care about regulatory frameworks, none of them apply to me because I'm not in a regulated industry.
You might be surprised.
He's pretending he's a client right now.
True. But what would you tell me, Tim? Like how would you
Do I know anything about you, Justin? You're a random CEO at a random company. What kind of company?
Construction. Let's say construction.
Awesome.
Let's do construction. That's a good. Yeah.
Awesome. So I love the construction analogy. Hey, have you ever heard of that thing called OSHA?
I heard.
And do you know what that is about?
Safety.
probably keeping your people from falling off ladders and, bad staging and, pouring tar over, I don't know, Justin's head as the CEO because you don't want to listen to him anymore.
But as long as you wear a hard hat, you're fine, right?
Yes.
Well,
Yeah,
see,
I wear
somebody
steel
had to
toes.
tell you to wear a hard hat, right? You needed to have a rule book or a playbook be like, wear a hard hat or reinforce the staging. There might have been some kind of compliance that, something happened somewhere in the past, and now there's a playbook, a compliance thing that you now need to follow. So specifically with a construction company, OSHA, like, oh my God, not that I deal with OSHA, but it's certainly something that you could relate to. Now, if you're thinking about cybersecurity and compliance around that, Justin, as the CEO of the construction company, do you care about your insurance?
I mean, only if I have to. I hate paying that goddamn check every month, but
I know. But what happens when Mario falls off the ladder and lands on Bryan with a bucket of tar and you're, running with the feathers?
wait, this is
Good,
being recorded, right?
We could finally shave his head.
I was gonna say they've been trying to do that for ages now.
Right? So when that incident happens, you're going to run right over to your insurance company and be like, listen, I didn't pay them. Right? Otherwise,
right.
You're paying the medical bills and the things, right? So you're going to run to that insurance carrier and say, hey, no problem. I'm covered. I've been paying you $100 a month to do $1 million a second. Except now that cyber insurance, when that incident happens, because you have Bryan out in the field with an iPad and he fell off the ladder and the iPad's not logged in because he doesn't have a strong password, right, from previous conversation. And Tim walks by and picks up the iPad, and now I have access to all your customer data because it wasn't protected, right? Mario knocks Bryan off the ladder, Tim snags the iPad, and Justin, I have all your data. Cyber insurance, probably not going to pay if you're not following some kind of cyber insurance framework, for example.
Oh, what do you call that, Cliff?
I do call that Cliff.
Cyber liability insurance framework. Don't fall off the cliff.
Our friends at Fifth Wall, we like to banter a lot. And I was chatting with Will Brooks. I don't know how long ago it was. And we make memes all the time. He makes way better memes than I do. And I was like, oh my God, we just invented a new framework. Cyber liability insurance framework. Cliff. Keep your customers from falling off the cyber cliff.
I love that.
And it's 6 things. It's very easy. Even you, Justin, as an MSP, can do that with compliance.
What are they? What are your 6 things?
Well, so cyber liability insurance, if we're going to go down this route. So not all of them, but a vast majority of them have now started to determine there are certain things that you should probably have in place, like security awareness training, phishing, security awareness training, incident response documentation, i.e. compliance scorecard, vulnerability scanning, right? Find the stuff and fix it. Backups, because, when the crap hits the fan and Mario's pouring, concrete all over Bryan, you want to be able to recover Bryan to some state. So backups. What did I say? I said training, vulnerability, backup, incident
documentation,
response planning, documentation, You're putting me on the spot here. I'm trying to remember the others off the top of my head.
That's all right. I was curious.
A platform that walked you through all of those things accordingly. There might be one that could help with that. Just
wait, it looked like there was something on your shirt there.
Yeah, it's just this little, check mark thing
little
behind me on my hat. Brand everywhere, product placement.
So here's.
Sorry, we said security training, incident response plan, pen test, backup documentation. I'm missing one.
So, yeah, pen test is kind of define pen test. Like, is this a
vulnerability scanning?
Where you take a pen and you just test to see if it works. Yeah.
Yeah, vulnerability scanning, documentation, backup, vulnerability management, security awareness training.
So on this subject, Tim, when you and I talked before a couple of weeks back, one of the things you mentioned is that insurance is the way in. And I know that you're talking because your target audience is us, right? We're talking to our end users, which also filters down, they are forced into compliance sometimes because of their customers. But when you're talking to MSPs, you say insurance is the way in. What's that about? Can you tell us?
Say that again.
Why do you tell us that insurance is the way in when we're talking about compliance to our clients? Like if I'm going to go and tell my client, hey, we need to get, let's get CIS 8.0, 1 in place.
Yeah.
Where does insurance play into that?
So again, back to relatability. Construction company doesn't care about cyber, but when Bryan drops the iPad, there's a cyber incident. And so who covers that cyber incident but the insurance companies? And as you said, Justin, I'm writing that insurance check every month. Like, that's a problem. And if I am trying to prove the defensibility, there's a new word for you, not new, but if I'm trying to be and defending our actions as the construction company, I want to be able to say to my insurance company, I'm doing the things. I'm not 100% compliant today, but I'm doing the things. I have backup today. I'm trying to get everybody on two-factor. That's, taking a minute, but I'm building that defensibility. And so as an insurance carrier, I'm going to look at some of my requirements. And if, say, 9 out of the 7 things you don't have, I'm probably not going to insure you.
Right.
Or maybe I have 14 out of the 3 requirements. Oh, like my risk as an insurance carrier is like way reduced because they're building their defensibility. And so why do we suggest insurance as the way in? Because they are the people writing the check when the stuff hits the fan. And we know the stuff will hit the fan. Just a matter of when.
Absolutely.
And so they're the ones paying out. And so if you can explain and have the conversation with your customer, let's bring in Dustin, right? Our good friend Dustin Bolender from Beltex Insurance. Let's bring in Dustin. I can't talk about insurance legally. I can talk about, as your MSP, the things that we can do to build that defensibility. But Justin's here to answer all your legal questions around insurance and why they can or cannot insure you and what happens during those incidents.
One of the neat things that I've seen, well, not neat, it's actually horrifying, is that insurance companies will make you fill in a form and say like, hey, do you have this? Do you have this? Do you have that? And people will answer the form. And then they just insure you blindly, right? So what'll happen is you'll end up putting a claim in down the road saying, I think I'm covered. And meanwhile, you didn't do the things that Tim was talking about. And so the insurance carrier turns around and says, well, you said you were doing the things on your form and you're not. So even though you've been paying us for all this time, we're not going to cover you. Yep. And now you're stuck with nothing.
So funny that you mentioned that, because literally on my 4th monitor over there is my insurance form for our good friend Dustin at Beltex that I'm literally sitting here like, okay, as soon as I'm trying to fill that out because our renewal is up.
Yeah.
But yes, as a vendor, I too have an insurance form I need to fill out and provide. And by the way, we can do a lot of that with integrations through our platform. I know I keep plugging my platform, but
no, plug it. We're gonna kind of wrap up with your platform, so no problem there.
Yeah.
But that's the thing, if you, no, not if, because it does, when you lie on these security attestation
Knowingly
forms,
or not.
right? Then they're going to go right back to that and say, wait a minute, you checked the box, said 2FA
Right.
everywhere, except Bryan exposed the fact that every account is the same password with no 2FA. Yeah, we're probably not going to give you the payout. So, your construction company probably doesn't exist anymore.
That's like saying you're a non-smoker and you are.
Hey.
Whoops.
I resemble that remark.
Well, it's bad enough because I hate these insurance payments so much. It's bad enough that I have to pay it. And now it didn't do me any good at all. Right.
Right.
It did you nothing.
Yeah. Another thing about compliance that kind of, it sells it to me. So again, back to the unregulated industry that is technology, at least technology providers like us. We've got our clients who are writing a check, just like they're writing a check to the insurance company. They're writing a check to us, and they expect us to be protecting them. How do they know if there's no form of standards? Going back to our poor Redditor who is 30 years in the industry and doesn't know what the hell he's doing to protect his clients. Guys, companies are writing checks to that provider all the time. So if back to my CEO hat here, I want my IT company following some framework and holding themselves accountable to it, because otherwise, how do we really know that we're getting what we pay for from our IT company? You
made a really good point in the beginning. Like, we're not a regulated industry yet.
Right. Yep.
And there hasn't been a good path for that yet. And I keep using the word yet because I think it's coming. In fact,
I do too.
Yeah.
I mean, I know it's coming, but you know what? I'll just say I know it's coming.
Right.
Whether it's the Global Technology Industry Association, formerly known as CompTIA, or PRINCE, however you'd like to go by. Whether it's the Trustmark program that they have, or it's some other entity or organization, it is coming. But here's the thing: I can't even get my hair cut unless I go to a licensed, barber,
right?
What do we call them? Hair person, whatever. Stylist. I'm using
hair
all the
care
wrong
professional.
Justin, what are you saying right for? When was the last time you went to a barber?
Dude, I polished this thing this morning. What are you talking about?
I was there this morning.
We MSPs literally hold the keys to Fort Knox.
Yeah.
Justin, your construction company is your Fort Knox.
Mm-hmm.
And Bryan has the one username and password across the entire organization.
Yeah.
But that's okay. Bryan, we have no standards for you because, you're the only guy here besides me with hair. So maybe we fall into the standard with hair and they don't. But
yeah. Entirely possible.
It's a crazy world. So, Tim, I think it's time for us to just, like, you've been kind of teasing us a little bit. You've been showing your logo off on accident here and there, pointing to your hat. Tell us a little bit about Compliance Scorecard. Yeah. Oh, all right. You got the coffee mug. Is it a Yeti though? Is it a brand name?
It's only a Yeti. I am such a Yeti snob. Oh, let's see. There's checkers too. I am such a Yeti. Like, yeah. Beautiful. Yeti or nothing.
Exactly. I love it. All right. We're on the same page there.
Okay. I have one of those too.
Mario's got a Yeti.
But mine is from PAX 8, Mario. I have one just like that, same color, but it's PAX 8.
Robin, baby.
Oh,
yeah. I've had a couple of those, but I lost them somehow. I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyways, Tim, tell us a little bit. Give us your elevator pitch, because you are, and listen, this podcast is directed at business owners. We're all business owners, and we actually have a fair number of technical people, MSPs, that watch at least parts of this podcast. So talking to us, what is it that your product does? How does it make our lives better so that we can make our clients' lives better?
Sure. So like I said in the very beginning, it's, as an MSP, you want to be able to have the risk conversation with your customers. And since your customers are listening to this, as a customer of an MSP, you want to know, are they doing a thing? Do they have the playbook? Are they following a guideline? Are they aligning my business, my construction company, to something? Right? That's the first part of this whole alignment component. And it's kind of something like, maybe I should patent, but it's this 4-part process. that we bring to the MSPs, who eventually bring that down to Justin's construction company, right? Alignment, authorization, adoption, and assessment. Very quickly. Alignment. Are you following a thing? Do you have a playbook? Is a thing aligned to a thing? Right? Pretty easy, straightforward to understand. Here's a set of controls, whether it's insurance or a mouthful of acronyms. Here's a set of things that we're going to follow. Here's the playbook. As the MSP, the authorization component, it ain't my stuff. It's the customers. It's Justin Construction Company. It is their stuff. They need to authorize that. You need to work with your MSP as an end customer of an MSP and ask them, align me to something, and then allow me to take ownership of that, to authorize that. Nothing different than, let's say, an employee handbook, right? Same concept. You have your staff sign an employee handbook, or a sexual harassment, or an equal opportunity, or an or HR kind of thing. We're just kind of applying that to the cybersecurity and technology components. Align it, allow the business to authorize it and have ownership with it. Now, you as the MSP facilitating the work, right? Charging for that work, by the way, and facilitating that work, you're in the best position because you know what they're doing tech-wise. It would be like hiring an outsourced HR to manage HR. Well, they're hiring an MSP to manage tech, right? As that customer, then, what good is the employee handbook or the password policy or the acceptable use policy if end users don't adopt it? That's the third A, that adoption component. Remember how we started in the very beginning on the why conversation? Why are we doing this? That's the adoption component. Allowing the end users to know, why do we do this? Why is it bad to have the same password everywhere? And then lastly, assessment cadence. I was invited to a conversation with one of our MSPs and one of their largest customers. We had CEO, CFO, HRO, all the people on there. And I asked the HR person, I was like, when was the last time you updated your employee handbook? I had to think for a minute and was like, I don't know, probably when we built the company like 14 years ago. And this is in the height of COVID. And I said, well, that's interesting. It's COVID now. Is everybody working from home? Well, yeah. Oh, okay. And then, do you have any time off policy? Or she's like, well, yeah. And I was like, so the entire way you run your business has completely changed, but you have not done anything in your documentation that you had all your employees agree to. So your employees can pretty much do what they want because there's nothing telling them they can't. Oh, and why is that? Because we haven't updated the handbook. That's right, because you had no assessment cadence in place to remind you to do that thing.
Yeah.
So break it down, bring it all back. Alignment, are you aligning to a thing? Authorization, as the business, you want to own them. Adoption, end users need to know why. An assessment, don't let it become vapeware or shelfware and be forgotten.
Which is where most policies live.
Truth.
Yeah, but it's not just the policies, right? That is one major component of our platform. Yes, policy tracking, policy management, but also assessments, right? You pick that framework and you look at, these are the gaps. All right, and here's a great thing. Anybody know what risk register is? Brian, Mario, Justin? You know what a risk register is?
No.
Teach us.
All right. As a business owner, right? And this can apply whether you're an MSP or not. You probably need to understand where your risks are. For Justin, it's making sure Mario isn't tripping over the ladder.
Correct. Mario down.
Right. So you do an assessment, you realize Mario's got big feet and Brian always puts the ladder in the way, so we need to do a deal with that.
Bad combination.
He does it on purpose.
But so you identified a gap. Big feet, bad ladder, whatever. You identified a gap. Now, Justin, as the business owner, you probably need to decide, do we want to fix that, i.e. mitigate the risk? Do we want to defer that? I don't know, pretend it didn't happen? Do we want to transfer that and Mario get smaller feet and Brian move the ladder? like, what do we want to do with those gaps? So a risk register gives you Amazon shopping cart of findings that you can apply a risk treatment to: mitigate, accept, transfer, avoid, defer, the 5 various treatments of risk that you can apply. And as an MSP, you don't make those decisions, your customer does. So for the customers that are listening to this, ask your MSP, hey, do you even know what a risk register is? Because I listened to this fancy podcast and they told me I should ask you about a risk register. Because you know what? I want to make sure I do something about the ladder in the wrong spot.
Okay. I'm taking notes feverishly, but I'm gonna have to go back and re-listen to some of that. That was
Sorry, I rant. I love this stuff.
no, I love it. I'm gonna throw a question at you, Tim. That this is again pure selfishness on my part, because you know what we're here to do is break this down for business owners. You give them frameworks, you give them best practices, as we've said before. None of us really know what that is, but we throw all this stuff at them, and then we let them decide, right? On that, as your clients, MSPs, run these assessments, compare against frameworks, can you tell us like the top handful of deficiencies that they find?
Do you want me to actually pull in? Because we do have some statistics and audit logging and tracking in the background.
Yes, please.
I open up another window if that's.
I can even give you time. Like we can sit here and shoot the shit while you're working on that if you need to.
So I can actually tell you, because we do have some statistics, not that we track. So first and foremost, as a compliance company, we take our MSPs, customers, and their customers' data very seriously.
Yeah.
We don't have the capacity to log into your stuff and see your stuff and do your stuff.
Okay.
However, we built a new feature out a couple months ago called Leaderboard.
Nice. That's what I'm looking for.
Well, because, compliance gets such a bad rap and it's scary and it's an ugly word and I'm afraid. Well, we flipped that out on the head by providing a leaderboard and positively reinforcing good behavior.
I love that.
Yay! Inside my MSP, these are my customers. Brian's got 9 policies. Justin's done a risk assessment. Like inside my instance, as my MSP, I can see how well my clients are doing, and I can reward that good behavior. Globally, not every name, but we have a general sense of what frameworks people are doing, what gaps they have in those frameworks, how they're doing with like-minded businesses. So we have a bunch of those stats. And I can tell you, if I log in over here, is this messing up my bandwidth at all before I'm clicking around in the other screen? I'm not going to share the screen because this is an internal tool for us.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
So we can understand how well our MSPs are doing.
It's okay, Tim. I've already hacked into your computer and I'm watching everything you're doing, so don't worry about it.
But I'm screenshotting this. I'm just rambling on and on, buying time while I'm waiting for my second factor of authentication.
Oh, again, 2FA. I hate that stuff. I've said before, if security isn't a complete pain in your ass, you're doing it wrong.
All right. So I can tell you what frameworks, how many policies, how many, and actually I haven't looked in a while, so it's probably a good idea because I tend to look once or twice a month and be like, oh my gosh. Just giving it a second to load on the back end. Okay. All righty. So let's see. The top frameworks are CMMC and HIPAA and our own business risk assessment that we define as a business risk assessment that most every MSPs use. And then the policy and procedure assessment, somewhere in the neighborhood of, I can tell you how many entries, so out of, I don't know, let's pick a number. I don't want to give away specifics because this is a blog post news article we're about to put out. So let's just talk in roundish numbers.
Yep.
Right? So let's just say out of, 400 assessments, give or take, we have identified, we being the MSPs, have identified around And now remember, an assessment could have 100 questions, or it could have 5 questions.
Right.
So if we say 400 assessments, and then I say we have 2,000 findings.
Okay.
Now, it's not a one-to-one correlation, obviously. And out of that 2,000 findings, risk register. Again, round numbers. I'm kind of bumping these up by a few hundred. About 1,800 of those have some form of risk treatment. Mitigate, accept, defer, blah, 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 blah. Is that the kind of thing you were asking, Justin?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I can say, oh, this is a great number. I'll give you this number. Over 2,100 policies deployed.
Oh, wow.
Across over 400 end customers.
Okay, so we're looking at 4 or 5 each. Yes. Okay. Math on the spot isn't my strong point.
I mean, we have some MSPs. I can pull one here right now. They have 89 policies deployed. We have others that have, on average, I would say the average number of policies per MSP is probably quick. Well, let me just pull up Excel. Hold on. If I just kind of copy, paste, click on the little average button, average. On average, there's 12 policies per MSP per company.
That sounds about right.
Not bad.
Which is one of the strong points of your platform, right? That because writing these platforms is a giant pain in the neck. And then each client has to customize them for their organization. And one of the things, correct me if I'm wrong, that your platform does is helps the MSP create that base standard document, let's say an acceptable use policy, that they can push out to their clients and just make a couple of tweaks. What is it, 5 or 10% of the work falls on the client, but everything else is done for them, right?
I'll just do that. How do you like that?
Oh, there we go.
Hide the super admin component. But yes, first and foremost, we have an extensive policy library that bring our 20 plus years of writing policy documentation as a baseline template for you as a jumping off point. Now everybody says templates, blah, blah, blah. They're a good jumping off point, and you should use them as the jumping off point. But our template is vastly different than what you're going to see across the interweb, because not only does it come with our 20 years of writing FedRAMP moderate documentation, whole other framework, we actually break them up into what's considered OSCAL, very structured, machine-readable language, right? Not only do we provide the base documentation, but we even take it a step further with what goes in this box. How do I write this section? How do I write? So TLDR, section by section by section, right?
I love that. I saw the TLDR. I'm like, damn it, I need this tool right now.
Right? Because we get it. Like, you're not versed in policy. We are. We give you some jumping off points, but we're like, hey, keep in mind, you want to do this and we want to do this. And like different frameworks will have different requirements and additional TLDR. How do I write this? So that comes with our years and years and years of experience. And here's the cool thing, right? You build out your library. Write it once, one-click deploy to any customer. You can custom tailor that further if you choose to, but it is literally one-click deploy to your end customer on all the different policy frameworks and all the different regulatory frameworks. So to answer your question, write once, deploy many.
Right.
Use our knowledge for the last 20 years as a jumping off point and align them to the business practices you're doing. Remember that first A. You need to align them. Yep. We're going to give you something to start with, but you need to make sure that, and this is where everybody freaks out.
Does your platform allow us to upload like the proof that this is done, or like for audits and stuff like that?
All that tracking directly in the platform.
Okay.
I didn't go through that. We have a live demo every week. People can go to compliancescorecard.com, click live demo, see all of this stuff in action. But yes, that is the core functionality. Remember the authorization and adoption and assessment? All done on the platform. Mario, you write your template once, your 10 base documents, maybe there's 10 hours worth of work. And by the way, now you have your own house in order.
Yeah, exactly.
And then one-click deploy to your customer. Your customer can then, whoever the authorizing official, logs in and says, yes, I agree, or reject with feedback loop. Once that's been aligned and authorized, then it's a click of a button to push out to an adoption campaign to all the end users with, here's the policy, here's why we do a thing, here's what it is, sign off. Kind of like you do with security awareness training. All that tracking, all that audit logging, all that change management, and then there's a knowledge base that you can share and embed and use that as a central repository for all your documents, even those HR documents. This is why HR people love this, because, oh my God, I don't have to mail something out and try to keep a checklist. No, all that can stay right in the platform.
Yeah. All right, guys, we're getting towards the end here, so we're going to start wrapping up. What I'd like to do is just kind of do a rapid fire questions for Tim. Bryan and Mario, what have you guys, as we've gone through this, what are some of the things that you'd like to know before we close out here this week?
Ooh, putting us on the spot.
Yeah.
Okay,
Well,
my question would be this. If there were, I always like to treat cybersecurity as a journey because not everybody can do everything all at once. It's just not possible. So they have to start somewhere, and they have to start implementing the first thing. In your opinion, Tim, what would be the first 2 or 3 things that a good business owner should have in place ASAP before they get anything else done when it comes to either compliance or cybersecurity?
Multi-factor everywhere, period. Force it down their throat. We're going to keep saying, I can't believe it's 2025. We're still talking about this. Multi-factor everywhere. Not everywhere, period. Your ADP, your Facebook, your Twitter, like everywhere. Did I just say Twitter? Oops. Everywhere. Multi-factor.
Okay.
All right,
Excellent.
Mario, you got something?
Yeah. So with a lot of these frameworks, some of them are, like I know, like SOC 2, it's like always ongoing. You're always taking, proof and providing it and stuff like that. Are there other frameworks that are kind of less tedious throughout the year?
Yeah, FTC Safeguards is probably one that will affect a lot of businesses listening to this podcast, whether you believe it or not. And what I've been seeing happening with the FTC is going after, starting with the big organizations, but stuff rolls downhill. It's a very, I don't want to use the word easy, but it is a framework that you and your MSP can work together to get you a good standard beyond just the 7 or 8 things in cybersecurity and in cyber insurance.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think we're coming up at almost an hour here, so we're going to start to wrap this thing up. Tim, one thing I wanted to dive more into that we're not going to. It's something that I talk about all the time, but I'm just going to mention it because it caught my attention. I think it was a LinkedIn post where you talked about culture. Instead of punishment, let's focus on rewarding good compliance behavior and fostering a positive culture. I would argue that in you talked about adoption, that kind of piqued my interest. That's been a place where I've seen a lot of challenges, a lot of struggles as MSPs, where we're trying to take these overwhelmed, busy, not just CEOs, business owners, but also their staff. All of us have plenty of things to do without getting another stack of things we have to do, another stack of documents we have to read and sign off on. 2FA, Jesus Christ, I hate 2FA, but we have to have it, right? But everything is just one more thing to do. And if we don't wrap a culture around this, I don't think we'll ever win the war of compliance or cybersecurity, period. And yes, you can do this with a stick, but I loved that your way of doing that was with the carrot, the proverbial carrot. So is that maybe as kind of a sign off, can you just run through how it is that you help MSPs instill that culture into their client base?
One word.
Okay.
Why?
Okay, I love that. Yep, you've already said that.
Start with why, right? So Simon Sinek has a great book, Start With Why. It's about building a company, but it also applies to the same cultural aspects. And it is the hardest lesson I had to learn as an IT professional that just wanted to click buttons and lock stuff down. Years ago, when we got that first thing, all I did was click buttons, lock stuff down, and pissed everybody off along the way. And it wasn't until I shifted the conversation with the staff and all the end users and bringing them on board and explaining to them, why are we doing this? Did you know that we are a government contractor? Well, yeah. Did you know that those government contracts require this stuff? Well, who cares? Did you know that we will lose $5 million worth of annual income and you will not have a job if I do not put two-factor authentication in place?
Yeah. There's the why that matters to them.
Right.
Personal. Yeah.
Right.
Perfect.
And what did Tim just do? Tim went into to M365, or Tim went into a thing and just enforced two-factor on everybody's account. At which point the CEO's knocking on my door, my phone's ringing, everybody's pissed off, and I had to go, whoa, big bad Tim came in with the hammer, as opposed to friendly, rewardful Tim came in with the why and helped them understand that this is why we do this.
Yeah.
Love that.
I mean, I love that. That's my takeaway. That's what I'm going to wrap up with. Guys, unless you have any final thoughts, final questions, Bryan, Mario, no? Okay. Then we're going to go ahead and close this one out. Tim, again, thank you for joining us today. This is becoming a way of life for me. And honestly, I think this is something that we are all going to either go kicking and screaming or willingly into the dark night of compliance. So again, thank you for being here. Thank you for your perspective. Guys, if I've got other MSPs on here listening, go to compliancescorecard.com, join the demo. Is that what you said? Product demo, right? Weekly demo. Yep. And those are live, not pre-recorded?
Live every week.
We got Q&A.
My team keeps telling me we need to shift that, but I still love doing the live videos myself.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Yeah. I could tell you're not shy on camera, so that's good. I'll be on there. I've got a platform. I'm not going to lie. I hadn't heard of you guys until more recently. So I definitely want to do a comparison. I love what you're talking about here. And I'll definitely take a look myself.
Tim. Thank you.
Of course. And I'll just end it with, I heard you say I got a platform, which is great. You know, we work with a lot of other partners and integrations as who and what we are, but we are an MSP first. We are dedicated to MSPs first. When you look at the GRC space and the tools that are available in that, I'd like to say we are the only one that came from an MSP, built by an MSP for MSPs, and we get you. And not only do we get you, but we also know you need to sell it, so we're affordable for you as well.
Beautiful. Those are magic words right there, because everything we do is expensive, and everything's one more subscription we get to pay for. It's good times. So final words to our audience. Again, we've been talking a little bit technical today, a little bit in the weeds. Our audience, business owners. I've got my own little framework that I invented, Tim, and I don't know if you're going to love it or hate it, but and just finding a really simple way for business owners to hold us accountable. This is what I tell people, and use safeguards, use frameworks, use compliance tools, however you do it. But look at these three areas in particular. Look at your technology and make sure it's protected. Look at your data, make sure it's protected. Know where it lives, know how it's being used, know how it's being backed up, and could it be restored? And then your people. Know your people, protect your people, their identity, policies, procedures, and all of that. That's the 97% that I'm talking about week after week. And frameworks just make it easy for us to make sure we're doing our job. And it makes it easy for you, Mr. or Mrs. Business Owner, to get some transparency and to know that we're doing what you're writing us a check for. Wrap that up with an insurance policy that covers that 3% gap. Make sure you have good cybersecurity insurance. and that they will pay in the event of a breach. Right back to frameworks, guys. So there we are, guys. Unhacked.live. If you have any questions, if you'd like to reach out to any of us individually, Bryan, myself, Mario, Tim, all of our information will be on unhacked.live. Bryan and Mario, as always, thank you for joining us. And Tim, again, great stuff, and we will be in touch. Thank you, guys. We'll see you next week.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tim.